Deane Lawler, how
You,
are you, mate?
that's right.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for jumping on, mate. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Always a
Uh,
pleasure.
Deane, you've been in the game for a long time, and what are some of the martial arts that you've done? How far back does it go?
I started training when I was about 12.
Wow,
Now I'm 62, so I'd probably say 50 years.
that's amazing.
Um, Started off the judo, did a little bit of amateur wrestling, which was very, very scarce in those days. We did have a bit of a wrestling thing going on in this country, but not wasn't big at all. But I did that scantily training there, little bits here and there, but more judo than anything. Then from judo to taekwondo and karate, or karate, how you want to pronounce it. My father sent me to these things because I was a bad-tempered little bastard, and he thought it was better for me to learn how to calm myself down. Little did he know, I just learned better ways of killing people. And as soon as I learned a technique, I would try to find the guy that picked on me that previous day and try that front kick out. And guess what? They they seemed
Yeah,
to work. That was that was pretty much the background to it. From there, I went on to a few different kung fu styles. Uh, Started training in Chuli Kung Fu with a guy by the name of Jeff Huey, Sifu Jeff Huey. Super talented man. He represented Papua New Guinea as a weightlifter. So his background and was really great for training with him for the main reason that you learned a lot about using weights, body weight, learning how to get yourself strong to actually, you know, help and make the martial arts techniques that little bit better. I've always been very, very fortunate because I've always had this unbelievable talent of running into talented people within the martial arts game. Started doing the Filipino martial arts back in the early 80s. Was very fortunate to train with probably two of the best out there, which was Cacoy Cagneti and Carlos Navarro, um, who actually had both prior to this, they had the last real fight to the death, if you want to call it, a bare knuckle match against each other. So it was really funny that I actually trained with both of the guys that actually fought each other in Cebu City in the Philippines and trying to actually beat each other up, which was pretty interesting. So they both had a different story, of course, who won, which I always love. That's the martial arts, isn't it? Everyone always thinks they've beaten that guy. Got into amateur boxing at a very young age as well. Um, I did a bit of everything. I think the biggest thing for my brothers and I is that we wanted to be, like when you play cricket, you have what they call the cricket all-rounder, the guy that can
yeah,
bowl and field. Well,
just
that's
good
pretty
at
much,
everything.
yeah, we wanted to do that. We didn't really want to be champions at anything. I never ever tried to be a champion. I did compete, state, nationally, and internationally, and did pretty well. I won a few things, but there was never the goal. The goal was always just to further the knowledge, and I found it super exciting. My weekends as a teenager was a Friday night. I would attend a boxing match or a kickboxing match. Saturday, I'd attend a boxing match or a kickboxing match or a karate fight, and then Sunday I'd enter another competition. So we would spend, my brothers and I, there was three younger brothers and myself, we would pretty much travel around and enter every type of competition under the sun. It was pretty embarrassing because, sometimes you'd show up with a gi that you just bought at the martial arts supplies with the creases still on it, and because that's what they told you, had to wear one of them, so you had to wear that. Um, it was interesting, but it was also a fantastic time, and I think the 80s, late 70s, early 80s in this country with martial arts was absolutely fantastic because you had
Yeah,
so many of them coming out of the woodwork, and it wasn't as and I don't want to upset too many people, but I suppose it wasn't as bias as it is now in some ways. We used to always get together, a big group of us, in the park or, at someone's house, and we'd have a kung fu guy, we'd have a jiu-jitsu guy, a boxing guy, a karate guy. Everyone was sort of getting together and sharing ideas. We'd all spar each other and get beaten up and, who beat who that day. And it was a great time. I saw that you did a podcast with Richard Norton, and he probably would have said something very similar. It was in the late 70s and early 80s. It was a great experimental time in this country because we were sort of being hit by the big Bruce Lee fanaticism and everything. And there was a lot of people that had traveled from different countries that emigrated and had started to live here. And it was great because we started to have the ability to try and experiment and train with all these different types of people. So it was great. It was great. The advantage of a multicultural nation, I think sometimes that's the beauty of this country in lots of ways. Very similar to America, where we have so many different people with so many different nations bringing all their arts to basically our backyard.
One thing that really impressed me about you, Deane, is your mindset for self-defense. You really do know and understand psychology. And there was a video a while back that went viral, and I'm sure you know the one that I'm talking about, explaining the reality of a knife attack. And half of it you got praise, and the other half of it you got backlash. And I know you personally, it was for demonstration purposes, and you wanted to show and for people to understand the reality. What is it that most people don't understand about violence?
Oh, look, I think that's a good question. I think with that video, it was quite funny. I found it a little bit disconcerting how people would be negative on it, because it just says to me that people that were negative on it had no idea what it's like to be in a real fight. And we're talking about a real fight. We're not talking about a competition. Like, a competition is not a real fight. That's something, and look, and I'm going to upset a lot of people here, which seems to be the trend I do over my career. But when you're fighting with someone with a referee and rules, that's not a real fight. That's a competition. I think you look at it this way. There are so many different forms of martial. There's martial arts, there's martial skills, and there's martial sports. Martial arts, you learn the philosophy, the breathing, all the intricacies, the culture of the techniques, and the actual art itself. You've got martial sports, which is things like kickboxing, boxing, kyokushin, karate competitions, point karate, taekwondo competitions, BJJ competitions. They're sports, and they are really, really close to being the real fight. Close, but they're not the real fight, because there are rules and regulations, and it's set time limits, and you've got people overseeing, so they're looking after you as well. So that threat of you being attacked on the side or from behind while you're in the midst of trying to handle one guy doesn't exist. And then you've got your core martial skills. And martial skills is the thing that I really, really like to specialize on. Martial skills is where is that? That's the old kill or be killed mentality, where you really, really learn how to fight. And I think where people don't understand violence is they don't understand the actual terrifying aspects of it. And especially with a knife. I mean, that cracks me up. I see people doing these most ridiculous things, thinking it's going to be like a breeze in the park, and I see it, and I think they're crazy, because, like me, I'm not a gun guy. Guns terrify me. I'd hate to have the fact of, someone pull a pistol and put it to the side of my head. What would I do? Would I try to disarm them? I don't think I would at all. I think I'd probably just go, "Hey, look, mate, make it quick."
Yeah.
Because a lot of people talk about it, and I think until you're really, really confronted with it, you really don't fully understand how terrifying this situation is, and what it does to your body, what it does to you as far as like adrenaline, your breathing, the way you stand, the way you think. It changes so many different aspects. That video that I did that at a seminar in Melbourne, and it wasn't to embarrass the guy. It wasn't to do anything of the sort. What it was was to say that when you are being attacked, it's just going to come out of the blue.
Yeah.
And it's a thing I find quite amazing with knife fighting. I see so many people teaching it, and I think you have to be very, very careful who you teach it to, especially if it's knife fighting. And I think you've got to understand there is a difference between knife defense and knife fighting. And if you're fighting with a knife, mate, you know straight away, even in our country, if you have a knife and you pull a knife on me and I disarm you and I turn the knife around and I stab you 3 or 4 times, and like some of these lunatics teach on the internet, I'm going to jail. Because the
Yeah.
first thing the judge is going to say is, well, mate, you took the knife off him. That was the end of the threat. Then what'd you do? Oh, then I proceeded, Your Honour, to stab him in the eye 15 times. 15 times. Yeah, it's really crazy stuff. And I don't think these people seriously think of the ramifications, the real ramifications of this type of technique.
Yeah, spot on, Dean. I think knives are terrifying, mate. And I've been training in martial arts for a long time, and I pressure tested with knives, and it just made me realize how tiring and taxing it actually is. Like, I'm absolutely exhausted when someone's trying to actually, obviously, use a rubber knife, but try and actually stab me for real. It is extremely difficult and terrifying. And I knew exactly what you were talking about and what you were doing in the demonstration video. And I praise you for that, because people don't really understand self-defense and the reality of violence. And all that martial arts goes out the window. What do you think is some of the problems that you see in martial arts that don't really address proper self-defense training?
Um, I think it's very easy to get caught up within those different aspects of martial that I mentioned earlier. People get caught up into the martial sports field, and that becomes everything. And everything they do for their training is based on that. So all their training is regulated around that martial sport. And they honestly believe it. Like, I always find it quite amusing when people say things like, oh, look, 90% of fights end up on the ground. Yeah, but 100% of them start standing up.
Yeah.
And the fact is, that's an old wives' tale. 90% don't end up on the ground. I think you'd be lucky to get 30% will end up on the ground. And that's being honest, right? And if you are in a first responder situation and you are by yourself, or if you're just in a normal self-defense situation, you don't want to be on the ground. If you do go to the ground, you want to go to the ground, you want to get back up as quick as you can, because you don't know who the hell else is around you at the time. You don't know where it's going to go. Where's the next step? Is this guy now going to suddenly pull a gun? Is his mate going to come out of the corner and get you? Is someone else going to step? Look, I was involved in a domestic violence situation, I think, many, many years ago in this security game. And it's quite surprising. I had a guy at a local hotel beating the hell out of his wife. Now, I hate that because I come from a background like that. And that's been one of the main instigators of my self-defense mentality. I've intervened thinking I'm doing the good thing, the superhero thing. I jump in there and stop this man from doing it. Now I've grabbed this guy, and this guy's had a go at me, and I've got stuck into him. And next, the woman that he was beating up, and I mean, she was bleeding. I think he'd knocked a couple of teeth out. She jumped on my back and decided then to grab me and then glassed me. I mean, you've got to be so careful in the situation, like domestic violence situations. There's two sides to a story. I don't condone him hitting a woman, that's for sure. That's the reason why I stepped in. And it's really amazing how then the victim then becomes the partner of the guy again, decides to beat you up as well. Next thing you know, I don't have one guy against me. Now I've got two.
Yeah.
Now I've put myself in a situation where I've gone, uh-oh, now what am I going to do? So it escalates so quickly, and people don't comprehend that. I think the other thing is, as I mentioned earlier about old wives' tales. I mean, I think people base their self-defense training around these stories from their dads or their uncles or their grandfather or something, like, putting keys between your fingers. I mean, come on, man. You put keys between your fingers and you punch someone, you're going to damage your hand. You're not going to damage them. I mean, have you ever tried it? I mean, get a set of keys, and if you really want to punch something, get a big hunk of meat, put your keys between your fingers and stab the meat how many times, and see how your fingers feel. I mean, it's a really, really silly thing to do. putting things like lighters, plastic lighters in between in your fist and then punching someone, well, it's going to shatter in your own hand. I mean, those things are old wives' tales, which are stories.
Yeah.
They may have worked for one guy, but they're not going to work for everybody. And even if they do work, I think they're ludicrous ideas. The other thing that I've upset people on the internet scene with was when I said about palm strikes. Um, Tell me, I've been in the security game 40 years, 43 years, I think it was. My attitude to it is this: I've never seen a palm strike ever used in any altercation that I've been involved with all those years. I've never even seen a video of it or a YouTube video of someone actually using a palm strike against someone in a street fight, in a self-defense. Never seen it. I've seen people slap people. I know one guy sent a comment to me, what about Bas Rutten fighting in Pancrase? And I said, well, that's because he had to use palm strikes. Yet when he entered the UFC, did you see him use a palm strike?
No, no.
Well, that's all I can tell you. And the funny thing about it is that when you get angry, we're monkeys, mate. Well, that's how we are. We're monkeys. We've evolved. We just think we're just a smarter form of monkey. We think we put a pair of pants on. We're smarter than the guy that doesn't wear pants. The
Yeah.
fact we're not. We're still animals. When we get angry, the first thing we do is we close our fist. It's like a protection thing. That's why we shut our eyes, to protect ourselves. They're instincts we do. It's like, when you watch a BJJ competition or wrestling competition and they get dirty at each other, they get upset. What do they start doing? They start swinging punches,
Yeah, exactly.
kicks,
Yeah,
and
you're right. Yeah,
their grappling goes out the window, and they just punch
yeah,
the hell at each other, and they look like rank amateurs. Then you think, look at these.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it's those primal instincts we need to understand and comprehend before we start thinking of what type of magic techniques we're going to use against someone. That's the situation. I'll tell you, I've been in a situation where I've been so angry that I've swung punches at a guy that were like swings. And later on, the guy beside me goes, "Oh, mate, lucky that guy wasn't that good." He says, "Because those punches took about 3 hours to reach the
yeah,
target." I said, "Because I was so angry. You don't realize anger, fear, being upset, all these emotions kick in so much when you're in a self-defense situation.
yeah, yeah,
You lose about 30% of your coordination. You lose your timing drops. There's so many different things occur to you, and people don't take that into account. And it's very hard to pressure test those things.
yes, yes. Dean, Danny Green, the boxer, ran a campaign against the coward punch, and I can't remember the stats. I think in the last 10 years, there'd been like 30 fatalities from king hits. And I mean, how is someone supposed to defend against that if they can't see it coming? And in the early hours of the morning, you've got people that are intoxicated on alcohol, you've got ego, and that's what fuels violence.
Yep.
What are people supposed to do? And when talking about situational awareness, how can people be prepared for something like that?
Look, I think people have. I think I'm very concerned about the term situational awareness. Unless you walk around looking like, and I think every and I'll give you a funny story. I think every martial artist does it. It's amazing when it's nighttime, you hear a noise, you get out of your bed, you're in your underpants, you walk outside, and you're looking around the yard, thinking, what's that noise? Isn't it amazing when we start doing that cross-legged kung fu thing going on? We're moving around with our hands up. We're looking like something straight out of a kung fu movie, waiting for the guy to jump you. I mean, we have a really unrealistic sense of what the world is about. As far as the coward punch is concerned, there's really no way you can train for it.
Yeah,
Situational awareness to me is about you understanding your environment. That's what it's about. Otherwise, you're going to be on high beam forever. You can't be that. I think you have to realize that when you go out at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're drunk and you're by yourself, well, that's situational awareness. Why are you walking around by yourself at 3 o'clock in the morning, walking down a dark alley? I mean, that's just stupidity.
yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe
Common sense.
might kick in a bit better rather than you running around on being hyper vigilant. I mean, after a while, it gets a bit tiring. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
And also you got to understand some people turn it on and turn it off at certain times. I remember working bouncing at pubs and clubs. You'll see a lot of guys as soon as they take that tag off and they walk out their door, that hypervigilance disappears. And I know so many guys that have got touched up and belted when they're walking out to their car because that switch turns off. I don't have to. I'm not doing the job anymore. Click, and then they don't care. They walk off to the car and nothing happens.
Yeah.
We used to make a rule with our guys, especially our team of guys, where we'd walk each other to each other's cars, or we'd park in the same area. So we always made sure that everyone got safely back to their cars. Your job just doesn't stop once the tag comes off. So I think, but coward punches, cheap shots, mate, I see them all the time. I've I've probably got 1,000 videos over the years of people that I've had to investigate certain situations at certain clubs where someone's just walked up and belted this guy, glassed him, hit him over the back of the head. It's a real common occurrence, and there's no way to train for it. You
Yeah.
can train to learn how to suffer the effects, maybe. I do a drill. I get people to spin around looking at their finger on the ground until they're dizzy, simulating that you've been king hit, you're still conscious. Now, what do you do? I know people find that comical, but I will tell you now, when you do it, it's pretty amazing how all those fantastic techniques disappear and you start reaching out and trying to grab something or swing at something and you fall over, and it makes you realize how incapable we are when we're slightly either inebriated or slightly injured. It makes our martial arts sort of go out the window a little bit. Yeah, makes us
100%.
Makes us a little bit more human.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
100%, Deane. 100%. You wrote an article a while back on the importance of first aid and why
Good point.
it's extremely important, and a lot of martial arts schools don't educate their students on the importance of first aid. What's going on? I mean, I think it should be mandatory.
I started teaching that in the 80s and everyone thought I was an idiot. I've had a lot of people, when I first wrote that article, you'd be amazed. After that article was written, I was amazed to see how many seminars happened around the countryside and overseas. Suddenly people started deciding to teach first aid before they did their. And so I think in some ways, hopefully I've had some influence on people's recognition of what true self-defense should be. Look, I think you're a fool if you don't teach first aid in a knife defense class.
Yeah.
Because the chances of you being stabbed, cut, or slashed are higher than you actually blocking the knife. I mean, that's reality. I mean, I'm not going to walk up with a knife and go, ha ha, are you ready? I'm going to stab you in the back. I'm going to stab you in the middle of your back, in the back of your kidneys. I'm going to just slash at you for no reason. It's just going to come out of nowhere.
Yes.
So the chances of you blocking that knife are a lot lower than you learning how to wrap your hand up or wrap your body up or wrap your neck up after the guy stabbed you. So I think learning that first aid is more important. So if I'm teaching a knife class, I teach emergency first aid first, before anything. And then I teach them how to, if they're going to use a knife, so this like this knife here, they're going to use a knife, I teach them how to use the knife without even opening it. So using the ends of the knife as a weapon, using the knife itself as a form of leverage, that type of stuff, before you even open it. Now, once all that's achieved, then only a select people I will teach what to do with the knife if it's open, because I'm a great believer in getting people to do a police check to make sure that they are of sound mind, they are decent people. I had an incident many, many years ago, and I don't like talking about it, but I need to talk about it just as a lesson for people. I trained a young guy back in the 80s how to use the knife, and I was only a young man myself. So, I was not as what can I say, worldly as I am now. and I'm teaching, and I showed him how to use a knife. Now I get a call that he's been locked up in jail or whatever, and then I finally ran out that I go to visit him, and he tells me that while he was doing a break and enter, he goes, "Hey man, those knife techniques show me really work." And that old guy grabbed me, and I caused some damage. I was just like, "Oh wow!" So it makes you feel like I felt totally irresponsible. I felt really, really terrible. I thought, "My God, what have I done here?" So since then, I've been very, very careful on who I show knife stuff to, and I think everyone should be. Why do you want to teach some lunatic how to use a knife and kill people? And this self-defense stuff they teach with knives, it's most of it's knife fighting. It's not knife
Yeah.
defense. I mean, it's so silly when I see, and I don't want to name the arts because everyone knows that the arts are what they are, but I see people doing it. I've seen everyone from BJJ to Krav Maga to Kung Fu to Taekwondo, disarm the guy's knife, then stab him with their own with his own knife. I mean, mate, what are you doing? Are you stupid? If
Yeah.
you're going to disarm the guy's knife, throw the knife away. So you and him can't touch it. Then it's you and me, you and him, man. Off you go. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, it's a really, really silly thing. First aid is so important because, and also to emergency first aid, and I think I would probably say battlefield first aid is probably the way, if you want to call that combat first aid.
Mm.
Learn how to use things like your credit card, your belt around your waist, socks, um, anything that can be used to clog up the wound, to restrict the blood flow, all that type of stuff. I mean, that's what people should be learning. I think then another thing they should be learning too is understanding that a knife is not necessarily the most dangerous edge weapon. The most dangerous edge weapon to me is a screwdriver.
Really?
Because
A
a screwdriver,
screwdriver?
yeah, a screwdriver can be carried and it's not illegal. The thing about a
Yeah,
screwdriver
true.
is because of the wedge shape of the screwdriver or even a Phillips head screwdriver, those things, when you've got your rib cage, those things, when they penetrate that rib cage, they actually spread the ribs and hit into the internal organs. And a screwdriver can stab you in so many different places and kill you
Yeah.
a lot more than a knife can. A
Wow.
blade can get lodged in ribs, lodged in bones. Screwdriver will go through that gap. No worries at all. So a screwdriver is, to me, the most dangerous edged weapon. And that's the reason why when you look at commando knives or military knives, the original knives they wore, special forces, they were a stiletto blade. They weren't used for slashing and cutting. They were used for penetrating armor, like the old daggers going all the way back to the 12th and 14th, 15th century. They were used for cutting. They were a stiletto blade, which is like a diamond-shaped blade with a very sharp point that stabs in and then separates the rib cage, separates the bones, and gets to the internal organs. And that's what a screwdriver does.
Wow. Wow. I didn't even think of that. A screwdriver, kind of
Yeah.
like an ice pick.
Yeah. Well, you think about it,
Yeah.
you get a screwdriver, you practice screwdriver attacks in class, and wherever that screwdriver hit, it hurts.
Yeah.
That's the thing about a knife, mate, is that and the old saying, you don't have to reload a knife. But the worst thing about a knife is that no matter where it touches you, it's going to hurt you.
Yes. Yeah.
No matter where it touches you. So it's
Yeah.
a different thing altogether. So yeah.
It's interesting. You've worked in the security business for a long time, Deane, and you've done crowd control. I think you've done bodyguarding as well. Is that correct? And most street fights or altercations can be de-escalated with your words. And I asked Richard Norton this, if he had seen the video of a man at Eric Paulson's gym talking about verbal jujitsu
Mhm.
and being able to de-escalate a confrontation and using your words. How much of it are you able to use your words before it gets physical? And I'm sure you've been in many situations where you've de-escalated using your words.
Okay, so the hardliners that have been there, done that, and this is going out to all the bouncers of the world out there that work some pretty rough doors, would say, no matter what you say, if it's going to go down, it's going to go down.
Yeah.
And that's the absolute 110% truth. If someone has made their mind up that they're going to seriously hurt you or hurt others, that's exactly what they're going to do, no matter what you say. That's it. But there are some people that second guess themselves. And that's really what your skill is. Your skill is to make them second guess their actions. So if you're going to verbally de-escalate anyone, that is where the direction you're heading. You need to be on the same par as them, the same line as them. You've got to create a relationship between you and them. And that's what makes a good doorman. But, you like the function of a club is this. The guy you have at the front is the good doorman. He's a guy who can handle himself. He might not be the best fighter, but he can handle himself. But he's the best talker. He's the best communicator. You'll have the monkeys or the gorillas inside that are running around going looking like this, and they're the ones that throw everyone out. But you've got this guy on the front door, and he picks and chooses who comes into that club. And he does it by the way he speaks. He starts a conversation. How's your night going? What have you been doing? Geez, you don't look very happy. What's up, mate? You had a few troubles today, have you? Mate, and then you go, look, I understand, mate. I've had a bad day myself. What about you? Oh, yeah, mate. Wife's left me. Oh, listen, mate, I have full outs. It's terrible. Are you okay? Yeah, good. Listen, mate, come in, have a drink. But if anything happens, you get a bit upset with anything, please don't hesitate to come and talk to me. That's it. That's how you gain that rapport. And, mate, I've had people do that. I've had big groups of guys at the front. I've pulled one of them up because he looks like he's having an attitude of some kind. And then later on in the middle of the night, I get into a situation. Who do you think's behind me? That guy. You're right there, brother. Yeah. I go, thanks, mate. No worries. Yeah. I mean, it's that rapport is really what you've got to gain.
Yeah.
Mate, it is a skill. Not everyone can do it. And,
yes.
and you need to practice it. I think where people fall down, and this is the question I get asked by people in self-defense all the time, especially people that are first responders that are dealing with people in many different situations. They go, well, what the three questions I always ask of any self-defense instructor, and this is what you should do. Say, James, you wanted to go out there and go, mate, I just want to learn how to fight in a street fight and defend myself, defend my family. We walk up to the guy that's coaching you, say, okay, mate, here's three questions. When I get into a situation, altercation starts. What do I say? What don't I say? That's the first question. And if he can't answer either one of those, go find someone else. The second question is, what do I do and what don't I do? Now, 99.9% of martial art people will tell you what they will do and what you shouldn't do. Okay? Most will tell you what you can do. Not many people will tell you what you can't do, but they do their best. But that's an easy one. The third one is a hard question. So when do I do it? When don't I do it? So if you can't find an instructor that can't answer those three questions, don't train with him because he doesn't know. He's gonna put you in a situation. You're gonna get down to stage 2. Stage 3 comes down. You're gonna get hurt. So if I'm teaching you, the first thing I would teach you would be you understanding your personal space. I would walk up to you and go, hey, do you feel that? And you'll go, oh, and you go, I see where your eyes blinked. I see where you turned away. This is your personal space. Remember it. Don't forget it. People who we care about and are close to us, we'll let them right into our space. But people that we know, even if you and I know each other, you and I still have a personal space, whether we like it or not. It's like a little force field that I feel really good when you're this far away, but I don't feel very comfortable when you're this close to me. So once they achieve that and becomes natural, the key point is to make them feel it and recognize it, because most people don't recognize it. Most people feel, you'll hear women say it and men will say, oh, I really felt really threatened by him. And that's a really silly thing to say, because you're putting a natural human instinct and making it horrific and making it a terrifying thing. And the thing is, we'll do anything to achieve pleasure and we'll do anything to avoid pain. So if you make that, I felt threatened by him, if you make that painful, then you'll avoid it all the time. And that's not what you want to do. You want to accept the feeling and utilize that feeling so you can progress in your ability to defend yourself. So once I've taught you that, I say, here it is. Then I teach you every time I step into your personal space, your hands come up. Speak like a battalion. G'day, mate. How you going? What's going on? And then and then I walk away, step back, your hands come down. I step in this space again, your hands come up. It becomes, you don't even have to think about it anymore. Just say, I do it naturally now. I'm standing here, and suddenly someone comes here, my hand comes up and goes, oh, g'day, mate. Here you go. What are you doing? Okay, mate. My hand automatically comes up. I walk through a crowd, I scratch my head automatically, just in case The crowd might want a
Mm,
cheap shot. You know what I mean? They become natural things that you're not hyper vigilant. You just naturally do them, right?
yeah,
Now, once you've learned that, then what I start saying to you now is, okay, understand what the theory is, and the theory is, and when do you attack the person? When do you defend yourself? When do you start fighting? Well, if your hands can touch my shoulders and I can touch your shoulders, then you're what I call you're within assault range. WAR, war. It's
yep,
war time, boys. Time to punch on. So if
100%.
you're that close to me, then mate, it's war. It's on. I should be ready to go. If I'm not ready to go, then I'm finished. I'm the one who's going to wear the first punch. So
Yes,
so that's the first thing you teach anyone. Once they've achieved that, it becomes natural. You do it from the front, the back, the side, everywhere. So many different areas. Then the next step you do is you start teaching them what to do when they get suddenly, when there's pressure put on them. In other words, teach someone to grab them and shove them into a wall. I love shoving people into walls because I think it's the best threat preventer, threat prevention exercise ever. Because what it does is that when someone grabs you suddenly, shoves you in a wall really hard, suddenly you've been grabbed, they've entered your space, that's threatening. They've shoved you in the wall, you felt the impact of the wall, oh, and next thing you know, the guy's right in front of you, and you're like, oh, and he's entered your space again. You're like, oh, and you do that forwards, sideways, backwards, man. So that's really how self-defense should be taught. The
yes.
chances are that those things are going to happen a lot further than someone sitting there and doing a flying sidekick at you.
Yes, 100%, Dean. It's interesting. You touched on a few things there, and this is where I think a lot of martial arts schools don't educate their students on dealing with that adrenaline dump that you get in a self-defense situation. And Jeff Thompson, I think you've worked with Jeff before. He
Yep.
talks about
No,
the pre.
I've never worked with him. I've read about him.
Read about him.
I've know a lot of people that have worked out with him, and I've had communication and dealings with them. But I've met the
Yes.
man myself personally. But
Yeah, and he talks about the pre-fight and being able to manage stress. And this is really important stuff because that flight or fight response that happens in a situation, how have you sort of taught your students to deal with that adrenaline dump that happens when someone's in your face and it's on?
okay, so easy. Well, it's not easy, I suppose, but it's a training method. There's an old saying that says one man's fear is another man's excitement. So keep that in your mind as I'm speaking, right? So if I said to you, what's one thing that you fear? What's a fear of yours? And I mean something day to day in recreational fears as well. You might be afraid of heights. You might be afraid of roller coasters. You might be afraid of parachuting. You might be afraid of going over a really big bridge. You might be afraid of going in deep water. You might be afraid of the ocean. So if I said to you, what's a recreational fear you have? Tell me. You must have one that
Oh,
you might not be terrified of it, but it makes you a little bit uncomfortable.
I'd have to say shark diving. I'm thinking about doing that, jumping in the
Well,
cage with great whites.
okay, well, no offense, James. That's not normal, mate. Who the hell- That's but say it's deep sea fishing. Say it's deep sea fishing for you. You know, big open ocean, deep water, very dark. The chances of sharks being in there really, really high. Okay. So, but then you get other guys that have been out in the ocean every day of the week. They love it. The worse the weather, the better they feel. Don't worry about those big waves. I still remember as a young bloke, my old man sent me on a deep sea fishing vessel to go out fishing, and they went miles out to sea. Man, and I'm not a good swimmer. They should call me Rocky. I swim better under the water than I do on the surface, right? And I was only young. I was only a teenager. I went out there, and these guys were out there drinking, and mate, the waves were coming up over the boat. I remember looking up at this wave coming out of the boat and seeing fish swimming in the wave. And I'm thinking, oh my, and I'm terrified. And these guys are laughing and joking like it's nothing. So one man's fear is another man's excitement.
Mm.
The first thing you need to overcome when it comes to threatening behavior, you've got to start learning, instead of being afraid of it, you've got to start assimilating with it. In other words, you've got to start liking it. So
Mm.
when I had young bouncers, young guys learning how to fight, they go, "Oh, mate, I get in there and I get all anxious and I get terrified of this guy in my face." My wife said a funny to me once. She goes, she goes, "I swear to God, sometimes when I saw you fight, you were actually smiling. It's so weird." But the fact is that I know it sounds strange, but you've got to start making those terrifying situations nice. You've got to start liking them. Like when I get that butterflies in my stomach, I go, "Oh, that feels great." And it means that's my mind telling my body to get prepared.
So channel it in a good way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we'll do anything to attain pleasure, and we'll do anything to avoid pain. So if you make it pleasurable, you'll do it, right? So look this way. You might get a guy who's afraid to go on a roller coaster ride, which is me. I don't go on those things, mate. If I'll tell you a story, I went down to Dream World and I was on that roller coaster ride, and I was terrified. I had my eyes shut the whole time. And at the end of it, as we got off, this woman goes, "Oh my God, did you hear that girl screaming at the front?" That was me screaming. What do you mean, girl? I was screaming my head. I was terrified, right? I was shaking, man. I was had like a
Yeah.
sweat. So that's me. But then again, you get me into a car park with a group of guys, and I start going, "Okay, who's first?" And I'm not boasting. I just find that comfortable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, and you've got to understand is that when I've competed in competitions, I get nervous like everyone else. And I find that more nerve-wracking than fighting in a car park. Probably because I've had greater success in the car park than I've had in competition.
Yeah.
It's really amazing and quite strange how the human mind works. Yeah. So
Yes.
the first
Yeah.
thing is understand that. Make sure every time tell people, like I tell my guys, if you want to respond to a sudden threat, what's the best way of training? And then this is going to sound really weird, and I know a lot of people have told me it's strange, but then again, I'm not exactly a normal person. I'm obviously got some type of mental issue, but anyway, that's another story. Um, but if you're driving down the road and you think you're speeding, you suddenly see the police, what do?
You slow down.
Yeah, but you don't just slow down. You put your foot on the brake and go, "Whew," and then your heart goes, "Oh, geez, I hope the coppers didn't catch me then." Yeah.
Mm.
Or you think you see a speed camera and you go, "Oh, was I speeding then? Oh my God!" Oh, and you panic, right? If you had your little what do you call it? Your little Apple Watch on or something.
Heart rate monitor.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
you would probably see your heart rate went up and your breathing changed and everything just in that split second, right? If a dog or a cat runs out in the middle of the road and you put your brakes on, what happens to you? Same
You
thing.
think, yeah,
Here you go. "Ooh," you don't want to run over the dog or the cat, or maybe the cat, but not the dog, right? So, but so then you put the brakes on, your heart beats fast, and you start breathing, and you go, "Oh," and it's a shock to you, right? I tell my guys when situations like that occur, when I was a young bloke, I used to do it plenty of times, but when that situation is stop, and then close your fists and start throwing punches, because that's how you learn to react or adapt to that situation. So I
yeah,
remember I was about 18. I was going down this theory. This is how I'm going to train myself. And I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden, a dog did run out in front of me. And I've jammed the brakes on, bang, and I've gone, "Oh." And then I've gone, "Jesus, bloody dog." And I've driven up a bit further, stopped at the lights. And as I stopped at the lights, my heart's still beating a little bit fast. And I'm like, going, I've gone, "Yeah." And I went, and I start throwing punches on them in the car like that. And I look off to my left, and here's this woman in the car looking at me. And all I see her do is wind a window up and lock a door because I think she thinks I'm some crazy dude, right? So true story, right? And I'm thinking I better not do that in front of too many people. But it's a form of training yourself to react spontaneously to that situation. And they're the situations where you need to learn that when you feel confronted, like when you accidentally bump into someone, oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Or you drop a cup of coffee, or you drop your glass, or you're washing up and you drop the forks onto your foot or your knife, your feet step back. You'd be amazed. If the funny thing I always find with people is that you get a lot of instructors and trainers, they never follow the psychological or physiological aspects of confrontation. So if I pushed you, if I suddenly shoved you, or I suddenly grabbed you, or I suddenly punched you, or you were washing up and you dropped the cup on the ground, or you put the brakes on your car to stop from hitting the dog, or you opened the door up and suddenly someone was there and you went, oh, no, there. What do you think is the first physiological thing you do?
You just freeze up,
Well, what you do is you actually
or you
hold,
react.
no, you hold your breath.
Yeah. Mm.
Everyone holds their breath, and people don't take that into account, that you actually hold your breath. If I grab you, you go, you actually hold your breath. And if you suddenly end up punching someone, you'll find that you won't breathe while you're punching in a self-defense situation. You just won't breathe. And I equate it to this. Most self-defense situations happen within the period of about 10 to 15 seconds. That's when it's at its utmost. It's the most dangerous period of time, is that first 10 or 15 seconds. If you look at a 100-meter sprinter, and I was a sprinter as a young bloke, it says on your mark, get set, go. You don't breathe in that 100 meters. You go, and you hold your breath for the full 10 seconds or 12 seconds or 15, how depends how fast you are. And at the end of it, you go, and that's why all the sprinters are like, so for that whole time of that maximum effort, you don't breathe. How many times have you punched a bag doing a 3, 4, 5 punch combination, or hit the bag on a burnout? You don't breathe.
Yeah, that's so true.
And that's what people forget. So your training then has to be based around anaerobic training all the time, oxygen debt training, because that's really what you're going to be confronted with. I know so many people that are super fit, but I've seen them get in an altercation. They throw 3, 4, 5 punches. Next thing you know, they're like, and another example of that, I suppose, and I suppose I may be talking a bit too fast, but you know, when you see two bouncers walking a guy out, there might be this tiny little skinny dude, and these big dudes are grabbing him out. And next you know, they throw the little guy out, and he's going off his head at everyone, and the two bouncers are sitting there going, because for the whole time they grabbed him and walked out, they weren't breathing.
Mm.
They were in that sudden state of flux, which occurs whenever you get into a real life situation. It's not like you're sitting there going jab, jab in a boxing match. It's a totally different situation. It's
Yeah,
bang.
that's so true. So true.
But people
What do you
don't.
think? Sorry, you go.
Well, people don't train for that, and they should.
Yes.
Yeah, I see a lot of people training self-defense, and they do gradings where they get everyone to burn out. You know, do 50,000 push-ups, and they run and they do squats. Then they go, okay, now attack him. I can't see the sense behind that. No offense, but will it teach heart? Oh, if you don't have heart, you don't have heart. Will it make you prepared when you're really exhausted and someone's beating you up and you learn to defend? It does that, but it doesn't help you with the initial response. To me, it's almost like you're training to lose. So what if you're losing? That's how you should be training. To
Yes.
win, you could be training explosive training, whether you like it or not. Power,
Yes.
speed, accuracy, timing, all those things are so important. Yeah, go on, sorry.
What do you think of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a form of self-defense? I know there's a lot of people that think that Jiu-Jitsu is very effective, but we're talking about self-defense and as a martial art itself. What are your
Okay.
thoughts on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Okay, now I'm really going to upset. You've really put me in the corner now, mate. I'm going to upset everybody now. Um, I think it's a super effective martial art, like any martial art. But then again, I'm one of the few, and I hate using the term RBSD, you know, reality-based self-defense dudes, but I'm one of the few guys that sincerely believe that every martial art is functional. I think the only reason why some of them don't work and why people think others work better than the other ones is because they don't teach it properly. That's it. Every martial art was
Yeah.
created by some tough guy. Wasn't some little old Chinese guy down the road who was looking for peace, love, and mung beans created kung fu. He created kung fu because someone was trying to beat him up or kill him. He decided to create something that he could beat them up first. Come on, let's be real here. Come on, mate. The first kung fu master, the first karate master, the first BJJ master was a tough guy. It was probably some guy that got bashed and he wanted to beat other people up. I mean, come on, let's be real here. Everyone talks about
Yeah.
this really, this wonderful thing. Oh, martial arts teaches all these wonderful ideals, and oh, get the hell out of here. Wake the hell up, mate. It's fighting. Why do you think a guy can do 6 months of bloody boxing or 3 months of kickboxing or 3 months of jiu-jitsu, go out there and smash someone, or 3 months of judo and just beat people up? Then again, I could probably do 3 months of rugby league training, football training, and beat people up too. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
many many footballers beat up quite a few black belts in bars and kickboxing champions in bars. I could tell you some beauty stories. Then I'd get done for playing, giving people a hard time. But anyway, um, but I think it's a great art. I think because of competition, it pulls it in different directions.
Mhm.
And then, of course, ego enters it, and people want to have the ranking. They want to have I always love the idea that everyone wants to have cauliflower ears these days. I remember as a young bloke, when you wrestled, no one wanted them. You put caps on your ears for a reason. You didn't do it so you get these horrible looking, deformed looking ears. Now it's like a
Yeah.
badge of courage.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, I say this way. The great thing about the UFC, there's a lot of bad things about the UFC mentality for fighting. A lot of people try to base all their self-defense stuff now on UFC fighting, MMA training. Um, the good thing about it is that it's starting to make people realize now the guys that really are the champions now, you don't see a lot of BJJ as much. You see
Yeah.
a lot of freestyle, a lot of judo moves, a lot of Greco-Roman, and BJJ for the submissions. So I think personally, when you look at it, I think that it's starting to realize now that once you're aware of what ground fighting is and what it can do for you, then suddenly the training becomes a little bit different.
Yep.
Is MMA the way to go? Look, I think every martial arts is MMA. Every kung fu system I know of, every karate system I know of, every taekwondo system I know of, and I say Korean system, I suppose, um, and even Thai, original Thai boxing, they all have a grappling component.
Yep.
They all have it. It's only competition has taken it out of their art because competition doesn't allow it. But now competition is allowing it. Now you start to see karate fighting with throws, locks, and holds, and it's super dynamic. I mean, you wouldn't want to run into one of those guys. Those guys can kick.
Yes.
Actually, that was amazing. So I think it was a necessary evil to come into the martial arts scene, for want of a better word. Yeah, I think it's coming. I think it's woken a lot of people up. But I think now you're starting to see people now breaking away from it and creating their own stuff and doing their own things. And I think it really has evolved. The BJJ you see now is certainly not the BJJ that came out in UFC number one,
Mm.
and it's totally different. And BJJ now is a combination of what, freestyle,
Yeah.
Greco-Stone, Roman wrestling, so many different arts involved in it. And but I think it's a great base. I think
Yes.
for the average Joe out there, Thai boxing to a point, I would probably say boxing, learn how to use elbows, learn how to use knees, learn how to stand up grapple, because stand up grappling is more conducive to real life than ground grappling is. The chances of you having a stand up grapple are a lot higher than having a ground grapple. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's reality. Yeah, learning how to throw, and judo has great throws. You can't beat it. Um, Shooting and doing single and double leg takedowns on your knees on concrete. I'm a little bit until you've been on the concrete of the bitumen. I think you want to have a second thought about doing that.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
um, maintaining ride positions on people on the ground is great for the fight. Terrible if you're out in the street. I have seen on many occasions security personnel take a guy to the ground, jump on top, mount him, start trying to lock him up, and then have his friend come over and football kick him in the head and knock the bouncer, or cheap shot the bouncer, or stab the bouncer. I actually saw a girl glass a bouncer who was mounted a guy trying to get him into a figure four arm lock and restrain him, and she just come up and glass him the side, split him wide open. So I
Yeah.
think in the situation it's bad. As far as MMA fight, mate, how do you not say it's great?
100%.
You know what I mean? So,
Dean,
but you've got to be realistic in the world. The less time you spend on the ground in the street, the better. Not saying that you're not going to go down there. You will eventually go down there, but the less time you spend, the better.
yes.
You don't
Yeah.
know who is around you. It's not a refereed fight. It's not like a YouTube video where two kids have a street fight on a field or in a schoolyard, or two blokes call another bloke out in the middle of the street in the local neighborhood. We're talking about people that don't know each other. If you're telling
Yeah.
if you're telling me, or people are telling me that I always love the idea when people say, in the old days, mate, people have a punch on, they'd get up and shake hands and buy each other a beer. Yeah, if they were in the local bar somewhere and it was just a shit fight. But I tell you, I have never seen anyone shake hands and buy each other a beer after a
Mm.
fight overnight. I've seen them get belted and then 500 meters down the road, they get into another one.
Yeah.
Then three
Yeah.
days later, they come back looking for them and it's on again. So I've never seen that. So I think it is a little bit of the old wives' tale. Maybe two old
Yeah.
blokes have a punch on, that happens. But
Yeah.
in reality, if you want to get killed, that's the best way of being killed. I think you want to be very careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
You, you,
beats
t-
actually, look, you can't beat it when it comes to submissions. That's it.
yeah. You touched on some interesting points there, Dean. And
Hopefully enough to
the
upset the rest of the martial arts community, which I'm pretty sure I've done.
no, 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 like some very interesting points. And it's interesting. Like I enjoy all sorts of martial arts. I love all sorts of martial arts. And I think one of the things about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is it deals with an altercation in a more humane way. So, for a bullying perspective for a child, it's not advisable for them to hit another child in the playground because he gets suspended and so forth. But you can deal with an altercation in a more humane way, or a hypothetical situation, your cousin or drunk uncle is getting a little bit out of hand at a barbecue. You don't necessarily want to punch them and, you know, things like that. So I think jiu-jitsu has a place, but you're right, 100%. In a multiple attacker situation, it might not be advisable to go to the ground, especially if you're mounted on top of someone. Someone can just football kick you in the head. How important is it too for people to know the laws, especially when it comes to self-defense? That's extremely important.
Mate, you'll be amazed. I see it on social media all the time. And if we go back to the knife thing, I see these young girls practicing this knife work and they're stabbing this dummy with this dagger and and I see I always read comments. The videos mean nothing to me, but the comments mean everything. And I read the comments, oh wow, that's fantastic. Good on you. Oh, I wouldn't want to mess with her in a dark alley. Well, mate, if she did that to anyone, she'd go to jail. I mean, I don't know why you're praising ridiculous stuff. If you're praising the skill and the art to it, great. But if you think that's real self-defense, you're kidding yourself. Look, maybe if we end up having an apocalyptic world, we may need to learn how to go stabbing people in the neck with a knife. But until then, you're going to go to jail, mate. Your life's going to be over.
Yeah.
It's going to be over. That's it. End of story. But to digress a little bit with your BJJ being humane, really what you're talking about is just basic control and restraint.
Yes.
And that is another thing that's really not taught. Like you will teach BJJ and you'll teach the techniques. And I know some of the real purists here will be up me for this. But really, if you're going to teach stuff for people to defend themselves, then you should be teaching control and restraint training, not control, restrain, and submit. You should be teaching control and restraint. Or to even phrase it better, restraint and control, which would be a lot better for you to do.
Yes.
Restrain the guy and control the situation. So that's, let me think, that's probably pissed off about at least 10 or 15% of the BJJ community. I think I've done pretty good today. But yeah, but look, you learn from it, mate. Look, the understanding the law is so important. I think it should be really part of your black belt training, at least your black belt training.
Yeah.
But I think even at the beginning, whenever I teach a class or a seminar, I always talk about the law. I speak about how assault is judged differently in Queensland than it is in Victoria, and different again in New South Wales, and different again in South Australia. You know, you're allowed to do certain things in those places that you can't do here. And in America, it's a different thing again. To go back to Jeff Thompson, he was a really, really big believer in the first hit. As soon as a guy gets you, hit him straight away. You know, um, I I think that's great, but in reality, I can't do that. If you suddenly, was at a nightclub and I just smacked you in the mouth, well, I'm going to get arrested for that. I'm going to get charged for that. So is hitting someone first if you think they're about to hit you a smart thing? Look, I think and people are going to I'm going to upset people. I can just see Jeff Thompson's forum going red hot now with my comments. Um, but I think if you're in a multiple situation, I believe that would be allowed by law if there's more than one person. And I've been in situations like that, and I can't tell a lie where I've had to initiate the first attack. Otherwise, there was no way I was going to win it. There was no way I was going to scathe unless I've done that. Yeah. So there are situations, but just hitting people, preempting the strike, I think you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen that now where people have just stood in front of a guy and then they've just hit him, he's fallen down, hit his head, died.
Yeah. That's the scariest thing about self-defense, Dean. It really is. And the more and more I dive into martial arts, I've been doing martial arts for 30 years, and I've had the privilege of training with you as well. And it really is terrifying. The fact that, yeah, people just have no clue the ramifications that could happen with their actions.
I think it should be, I don't know if it should be called self-defense or it should be called personal awareness or personal protection. For the main reason is that self-defense is such a huge term. It just leaves everything very open, I think, and I don't think it needs to be that way. I think we really do need to be aware of what we can do and what we can't do. The other side of the coin is this in this conversation is that the bad guys don't care about the law. And that's another thing. You've got to understand about the morality to it all. If you're a good person, like there's an old saying that says, if you're a good person, you don't turn bad. You might make mistakes, but you don't turn bad because you're good. If you're a bad person and good people just don't turn bad. You don't suddenly go from being, you see people, he killed his wife and his children and he killed the neighbor and he killed the dog, whatever. But he's always such a nice person. I don't know what happened. Well, he must have never been a nice person because nice people don't kill people. That's it. End of story. I don't care. He must have always been an absolute asshole because otherwise, why would he have done it? You don't suddenly just go, "Oh, mate, he was such a good kid." Like I saw that, and I probably shouldn't make any statements here on this, but there's a particular situation where we saw an elderly woman killed in Brisbane here recently at a shopping centre. And the first thing the mother of the man that's done it goes, "Oh, but he's a good boy." Well, he's a good boy, is he? He stabbed to death an elderly woman in front of her grandchild. I mean, he's a good boy. No, he is not a good person at all. I mean, I think we need to start waking up and smelling the coffee here.
Yeah.
Good people don't turn bad. If they do turn bad, and I mean, good people make mistakes, yes, but good people don't kill people.
Yeah.
Good people don't rip other people off. Now, if suddenly I know you and I defraud you and I go out there and I rip you off, and you go, yeah, he might have ripped me off, but he wasn't a bad fella. Well, that's not true. I'm a bad fella. That's why I ripped you off.
Yeah.
I saw the advantage that you're a good fella and I can rip you off, so I'll rip you off. That's it. I mean, that's what people don't understand. So on the other side of the coin, that's what we're looking at now. The bad person the evil person, the corrupt person, that person will not, he'll take the law into his own hands and he'll say, man, I'm just going to hit this guy. And that's what makes self-defense very, very hard for good people, is that we're not willing to be bad. And the other thing is that the criminal or the attacker has done it before on more than one occasion. He's used to it. He's used to the adrenaline rush. He's used to the response that he's going to get from it. I shouldn't say this, and I've learned, but I'll tell the story just for the sake of reality. Using weapons. I've seen. I had a couple of friends of mine who could use bottles as weapons. So good. I mean, man, like I was amazed at what they could do. And I remember the first time I got in a situation where I had a multiple situation. I was backed into a corner, and I ended up having to use a bottle as a weapon. And I remember and I'd never ever done it before. And I remember hitting this guy with the bottle, and it went bonk on his head like a watermelon, like you're tapping a watermelon and see if it's right. And he sort of just looked at me, and I went, "Oh, that didn't work." So I went smash and hit him real hard, and it smashed, knocked him out. No, wow. I've never ever forgotten how to do that. Now, without a word of a lie, when I did use it again in another situation many years later, I didn't hesitate at all to do it. That's what I'm trying to equate, what I'm trying to put across to you.
Yes. Yes.
Once you take that step into that violent world, then it's so easy to take that step again into that violent world.
Yeah.
So an example of that would be if I told you, have you ever knocked anyone out, James? I don't choke him out. I'm talking about physically punching, kicking someone.
I have, yeah, in sparring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What was it? What technique?
Spinning hook kick.
Okay. So I guarantee you money that if you were in a self-defense situation and everything had failed, that you would probably throw a spinning hook kick. And the reason why is that you've had success with it. That's how our brain works when we're under stress. That's why you see people, footballers and everything, they get into a fight. He grabs the guy's jersey, the other guy grabs his jersey, and they sit there and they hammer each other in the head the same way 50 times. If I grab you by the shirt and I punch you in the face, and I hit you once, and then you put your arm up and block it, I'll still punch you in the same area, and then I'll suddenly go, hang on, that's not working. Then I'll change the direction. But I'll do at least 2 or 3 before I change direction.
Yeah.
Because I've had success. So if you've had success in a left hook, that's why you see boxers or fighters in the ring. They've had success with a particular punch, and you hear the commentary, where they say, "Well, look, he's just trying to load up. He's just trying to take his head off that big right hand." And that's what we do when we have success. And it's a thing which they call kinesthetic perception. It's the ability to gain a skill through the sense of feeling. And we all do it. If your girlfriend comes up and rubs your hair every time, and it gives you the emotive feeling of that she cares about you, no matter whether you like it or not, every time she does it, you're going to get that feeling. And when the day that she doesn't do it, you're going to go, "What's wrong?" Do you understand what I'm saying? That is
100%.
That's how we are as animals, yeah? So success is what we do. So your training then has to be based on that sense of feeling. And as I've mentioned many a time, many podcasts, if I said to you, what's one thing in swimming that can't be taught? What do you think it is?
I don't know. What is it?
You can't teach people to float.
I was just about to say float, but I wasn't sure. Can you teach people how to float?
You can't. You can tell what it's about, but you've got to feel it. And then once you've acquired the feeling, you never forget it. Now, I'll make it even easier for what's one thing about riding a bike that can't be taught?
One thing about riding a bike.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess it's that self-awareness, the balance. You have to sort of understand.
So it's balance. Yeah. You can't teach balance.
Yeah.
You have to feel it to acquire it. But if you notice something about floating and riding a bike, that once you've learned how to do it, you never forget it. Once you learn how to swim, have you noticed that? You might not jump in a pool for 50 years, but you'll jump in the water and guess what happens? You swim. You ever notice you haven't ridden a bike? Well, haven't, I don't know if you ride bikes recently, but if you haven't ridden a bike since you were 16 and you're 40 and you decide to jump on a bike, guess what? You can still ride a bike. Maybe not
Yeah,
as coordinated as it used to be, but you can still ride a bike because that sense of balance has been acquired through the skill of kinesthetic perception. You've acquired a skill through the sense of feeling. The way we are feeling animals. Everything we acquire through that sense, we maintain. That's why horrific things that happen to us in our past, whether we're victims of abuse or domestic abuse or violence or whatever, we never, ever really get over them because we acquired that feeling of fear, of hurt, of pain through a sense of feeling. In other words, a physical act has caused us to relate that feeling to that physical act on a regular basis. And that's what we'll do. So if your left hook was the one that saved you in many, many fights, your left hook will be the one that you'll fall back on every time to save you again, whether you like it or
yeah,
not. That's why, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, I've set you up for this one actually. When I talk about when you see grapplers and BJ guys wrestling, they get angry and they start swinging punches because they've had probably prior success of punching someone in the head before they did their BJJ.
Mm, interesting, Dean.
That's why we're,
Very interesting.
and a lot of people don't realize that. Just a lot of
Mm,
people just don't do it.
yeah,
We are victims of our environment. We're a product of our environment and how we're brought up and what happens in our life. That's why we do things. We read things into people. Yeah, have you ever noticed that when you're dealing with human beings, you think people hate you for years? You think that guys, they really don't like me. And then later on they say they liked you and you go, it's like a girl, you meet girls years later and they go, I really liked you at school. And you're like, hey, geez, I thought you hated me.
yeah, yeah,
Perception is reality, and sometimes our reality is not someone else's. And our perception is skewed, it's not correct. So it's pretty amazing. And sometimes it's the opposite. That's how we get conned. People con us by making us believe they're sincere. And we go, oh wow, what a lovely guy. And then later on, he goes, I can't believe he did that. I just can't.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
because they made you believe it. They use a motive sense of feeling, and you believed it because you got the emotion from.
I've got one more question for you, Dean. For anyone that's listening and wants to get into martial arts, but purely for self-defense, because I remember I started martial arts purely for self-defense, and I've always been fascinated with self-defense. I've never so much gravitated towards competition. And I remember you said to me once, boxing, take up boxing because it's one of the best self-defense systems. But where would someone go? Should they start
Okay,
with boxing first, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or
so to put it in its right space, boxing is good because you're getting that emotive sense again. You're getting impact. You're hitting things. You're being hit, right? But it's not good for you if you're being hit and you're not getting any response from it. In other words, if you're just being beaten up in a class, like I hate it when I go to contact classes and I see people kickboxing and boxing and the coach or the instructor or the, what's the name, is just beating everyone up all the time. A lot of people say that about me, that I do that, but the fact is I don't. I do it in particular drills because I'm trying to create a particular skill. I don't suddenly go, okay, line up, sparring, and then kick the shit out of everyone in the class. I mean, that's just stupid. But a lot of people do it. And a lot of people's idea, and you see about CTE injuries now, brain injuries, where people say, but hard sparring is not where it's at either. Joe Lewis said one thing to me many, many years ago, which I really thought was great, about things like called limitation sparring. You know, you want to do limitation sparring. You want to say, get out there and spar with a jab only. Teaches footwork, still got a bit of impact training, still a bit of threat happening, distancing, timing, things like limitation where you're not going to get seriously injured. So boxing is a really good base to get used to people fighting within arm's reach. Get it? Arm's reach. Some people say, "Oh no, no, you do BJJ because, like you said, it's a humane way, and people think that." But mate, bad guys aren't humane. What do you think? You think a bad guy's going to walk up and grab you and try to do a hip throw, or try to lock you up and put you in a wrist lock? No, bad guy's going to walk up, smack you in the back of the head with a bottle, or stab you in the back with a knife, hit your head with a stick, or he's going to walk up and just headbutt you or smash you in the face. That's what he's going to do. He's not going to walk up and grab you in a wrist lock or a arm lock, come along hold or something. Take me to the ATM and take all the money out. No, it doesn't work that way. And that's where we fall down. Boxing's good for the aspect of actually threat of a punch coming at you and so on. Thai boxing's good for you too, but the reason why I say but is Thai boxing is great for the knees and the elbows and the stand-up grappling. I think you can't beat the stand-up grappling in Thai boxing combined with the strikes. It's absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But my attitude to it is that the chances of kicks thrown in a fight are pretty low. So the chances of punches being thrown are very, very high. Headbutt punches high. And stand-up people grabbing you and moving around stand-up great. Throws, I would say judo. So if I was training you, I'd say learn how to box and throw in knees and elbows and stand-up grappling. Learn judo, because judo is probably more attributable to what grappling should be on the street than anything else, because all those throws, hip throws and break falls are a great thing to learn, so you can defend yourself. And then last but not least, try to do a submission art of some kind, whether it's submission arts wrestling, whether it's catch as catch can, whether it's BJJ, it makes no difference. Something that where you can do a submission thing on the ground, that's great. But don't get too carried away with it.
Yeah.
A lot of people forget about the others and stick to the last one because they find it easy and it's great to roll around. They call it like it's a community, and that's really good. But understand, bad guys, the only community they have is kicking your ass.
What about multiple attackers, Deane? What would you recommend?
Well, if you want to train for multiple attackers, you need to train for them.
Yeah.
You need to train for them, and you need to train for them. And the biggest thing against multiple attackers is not learning how to punch and kick. It's learning a strategy. A strategy for multiple attackers is what you need to train for. I'm gonna be a little bit arrogant here, I suppose, to the point, if I'm not already. But I've had people say to me sometimes, when you hear guys tell you a story about street fighting, I remember a very renowned martial artist come street fighter who was telling me one time about a fight that he had, went on for like 15 minutes. And in my little tiny brain, I said, okay, this guy must be a shit street fighter, because I've never had a street fight go any longer than not even 5 minutes. I mean, imagine 15 minutes in a street fight, you'd be physically exhausted, right? So that's not a street fight. That's just a comedy show, that is. I think multiple attackers start off with people push, shove, saying things to you, setting you up. Situational awareness, which I don't know if I really like using that term, but being aware of your surroundings, looking at what people are doing, looking at their strategies, understanding a bad guy's strategies is everything. If I'm sitting there talking to you and suddenly I'm at a coffee shop and we're on the laptop and we're talking, hey man, how you going, whatever, and suddenly you notice someone walk behind me and look in and look down at my phone or look down at my wallet or something, it would be good for you to say, hey, Dino, keep an eye on that dude that just walked past you, man. I saw him really sort of check you out a bit. And I go, right, okay, no worries. And being aware of that without panicking. And then what I might do is I might turn around and face the laptop on a different angle now, so I can talk to you at the same time as just sort of maybe have him in my peripheral vision, just in case, So that's strategy for multiple attackers, watching what people are doing. If there's one
Being
guy,
aware.
if there's one guy in a group and he separates from that group and comes over towards you, and then you see the other two or three move off to the side here. Then you see him silently giving them a bit of a look. Then you go, uh-oh. You know yourself like in a nightclub, right? The one thing we used to get, we used to have people come in, they do like, they're setting you up. You'd have a couple of guys come in and they come in and they walk over and go, here you go, and they walk over to the bar. Then another two or three guys would come in a little bit later and they'd walk over to the bar and they'd all be drinking water or soft drink. Like, okay. And then whether they like it or not, they all give each other a bit of a look like they know each other, but they're trying to make out that they don't know each other, and they're there to beat you up. It's on. So you need to get a strategy in place. That's how I look at that situation. Strategy is quite important, because no matter how good you punch and kick, no matter how good your BJJ stuff is, if there's look, mate, it's flat. It's hard enough trying to beat one person up, let alone trying to beat
Yeah.
up or three. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the only beauty of two or three or four or five or six, probably the more people that try to attack you, the easier it is in some ways, because they tend to fall over each other. And I know I'm equating back to the security game again, but have you ever seen bouncers in a nightclub? There's one guy, and then one guy grabs him, then the other bouncer comes in and grabs him, then the other guy, and next thing you know, you've got like five guys, and they're all on the one leg or the one arm.
Yep.
There's no
Yep.
strategy. The strategy should be like, I grab his left arm, you grab his right arm, you grab his left leg, you grab his right leg. But instead, there's like three on one arm, and there's one guy on the other arm, and one
Yep.
little guy's been swung around by the arm, and the other three are grabbing the other bloke's arm. Then another guy. Man, I've actually seen three guys grab the same guy around the headlock. You've got three arms around this guy's head, like one on his neck, one on his chin, one on his eyes, and they're fighting over who's going to get the choke. You know what I mean? I mean, it's so
Yeah.
ridiculous. But that's the beauty of multiple attackers is that they tend to do that.
Yes.
They're also keen, ego driven to get a piece of you that they sort of fall over each other. So sometimes strategizing against them can be a little bit easier than the one on one when he's totally focused just on you. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Deane, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate, to
Yeah.
sit down and have a chat with you. And you have a wealth of knowledge in self-defense, and it's every time I chat with you, I always learn something new.
Yeah.
And hopefully down the track, I want to do more training with you. But where can people find you?
Mate, I'm on Facebook under Lawler Tactical, but in probably in the next few weeks we'll have our own YouTube channel coming up.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
I'm going to be interviewing a few different people, going through a few different schools, but I'm also going to be doing a lot of self-defense stuff, a lot of training drills on there. I think I don't like showing situations. I like showing drills to train you to build up that particular skill you need for self-defense. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
a good thing for people to learn.
Yeah.
And yeah, and understand that all arts are good. It's only the way they're taught that makes them bad. I've worked with Shotokan. Well, I've worked with a guy who's a traditional Shotokan karate fighter. I mean, upper cover blocks and reverse punches. The dude was a machine on the door. I've seen him fight two or three guys doing something straight out like a three-step sparring pattern from a martial arts book. I mean, it was amazing to watch. So I think it really is the way it's taught.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people got to realize that the original master of their art was a tough guy. He originally put it together to defend himself, not to play point fighting games or win the UFC. He did it to defend himself. So you need to concentrate on what are you going to teach? Are you going to teach martial arts, martial sports, or martial skills? Or are you going to teach a selection of them? Are you going to teach all three? And if you are teaching all three, which one are you going to emphasize the most? Like me, I teach all three, but I emphasize martial skills. That's what I emphasize. So my training is probably 99% martial skills, 1% martial sports, and half percent martial sports, half percent that. And I train fighters, compete in different things. I do that as well. But I always make people realize that's the game. And it is a game. It's a match.
Yes. Yeah.
Not a fight to the death. So
D-
I think that's probably the direction I'm going to be heading. I'm getting a bit old now. I'm 62 now, going on 63. So I'm starting
You
to feel.
don't look 60s, mate. Yeah, you look a lot younger than that.
Well, mate, you're definitely going to get a cup of coffee, maybe even a movie, maybe even a piece of cake. But you never know. You're lucky in a big city. But but the key point to it is you just be logical and be aware of your ego. Don't be so concerned about what other people think, and have your own ideas. Realize and say to yourself, what do I want to get out of this? If I'm going to join up BJJ, what do I want to get out of it? If you want self-defense, then find a BJJ instructor that specializes in the self-defense street aspects of the art. Don't go to the guy that does competition, because whether you like it or not, don't get me wrong, he'll be great and he'll show you magical things. but his bias is competition.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and whether you like it or not, it's the way it is. It's like anything you do in your life, everyone has bias. Everyone has it, myself included. I love martial sports. I love martial arts. But my bias is I look at it, I still look at it with a critical eye and go, yeah, but I don't think I'd ever do that out down the road in the car park. Because, and that's our bias. That's what we've got. The
Yeah.
other thing to remember for the people that watch and listen to your podcast is in this country and in Queensland, we've got so many talented instructors like yourself and so on that can go out there and you can learn so much from. But don't be so silly as to just think that learning from one guy is going to make you great. You really do need to progress, train with many different people, gain insights. I've gained more knowledge from sitting down having coffee with guys like, say, Richard Norton than training with Richard.
Yeah.
Because the problem with what we have is that we see the end product and we want to train with the end product. But the only way you're ever going to comprehend the end product is by going down and following his journey. You understand?
Wise words, mate. Wise
So that way,
words.
then, if you follow the journey, then you'll end up having the end product that you wanted. But you've got to go on the
Yes.
journey. That's why in martial arts, people bag people because they want to be you, and it's easier for them to knock you down so they don't have to do the big journey to become you.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Deane Lawler, thank you so much, mate. Been an
Thank you.
absolute pleasure to chat with you, and I will speak to you soon.
Anytime. Thanks very much, mate. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Deane. See you, mate. Bye.